Hi, and welcome to Muse College Consulting's Return on Investment Stories. I am so thrilled to have my friend and former student Karen Wallace with us here today to talk about her journey and all of the amazing accomplishments and successes she's had during and post college. So, welcome, Karen. Let's just get started by having you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about how we know each other.
Great. Hi. Well, I'm going to echo. I'm just so happy to be here with you, Tracy, an absolute amazing mentor and resource during my time in college. So I'm just so grateful to be here, continuing our friendship. I'm Karen Wallace. I use she, they pronouns. I studied lighting design at the theater school at DePaul University, where Tracy was the head of admissions. And so that's how we knew each other. I worked in the admissions office pretty much my entire time in school, and it was one of the best experiences, definitely a highlight of my college time. So I'm really glad to have gotten that experience and to be continuing our relationship now.
Me too, Karen. I'm so happy you're here. And it's just always so fun, especially when we're doing these conversations, to know that I was with you from the beginning of your journey. And really, I have very clear memories of you coming with your mom to your interview day and seeing you at visit days and all of that. And Karen and I have a random crossover in that she grew up in the same neighborhood I was living in when I was living in Chicago. So I always have thought that that's been very, we were meant to be connected in some way, shape,
Yes.
or form. But yeah, and then just to see how far you've come since those first times we met until where you are now as this amazing professional. So I'm so excited to dig into your story. So you mentioned that you have a degree in lighting design. So let's rewind a little bit in your story, and I want to hear about how you got interested in lighting design, where you discovered that was your passion, and why you ultimately decided that that's the degree you should pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was in particular really fortunate to have some good mentors and resources when I was in high school who really inspired my love of lighting design. And I felt like that was an area where I really could grow a lot and explore and get a lot of hands on practice. So I think that influenced it a ton. And then when I started the process of applying for colleges, honestly, I enjoyed the prep work and the application process for lighting design the most. I was in between some other degrees. One of them would have been like a music theory degree that involved a lot of practicing the musical instruments all the time. And that was not as interesting to me as putting together my portfolio and going through all of the work that I had done to put on shows in high school and sort of boil it down to figure out how I would communicate to the interviewee what my process was, what I liked about lighting design, and why I would be a good fit for their program. So I feel like that was one of the things that really pushed me in this direction is that I just enjoyed that process the most. And then why lighting design specifically, I always say is a mix of technical and creative knowledge and challenges. And I was very much trying to find a way to blend both those parts of my brain. I loved all the creative stuff. I loved doing theater in school. I also loved the academic challenges and the idea that I will always be learning new technologies and new ways of accomplishing lighting design was really exciting and really made me feel like there was lots of room to grow and lots of experiences to be had in the lighting design realm. So that is, I think, what solidified the decision for me. In
Yeah.
addition, I have an older sister who does lighting design, and she's my hero. I loved being able to talk with her about the work that I'm doing, and she was one of those great mentors and resources that I had to encourage me and support me on the decision.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and I also love, and I don't think I knew this about you, but that you're also looking at a possible music, the direction in music, right? Which is
Yeah.
interesting just to kind of think that you could have gone any which way. Did you end up applying to any music programs or did you just end up focusing on lighting?
I just ended up focusing on lighting. I was going to equal parts apply to both programs, and then the music would have been a lot of work having only applied to that, and then doing that on top of trying to put together the portfolio and all of and prep for interviews was just not really tenable. And so I ended up picking the one I was enjoying more.
Yeah, that's very smart. And it can really be a hard decision sometimes, especially when you're 17, 18, trying to figure out where you want your life to go and what that might look like. And so it was a big decision. And I mean, I'm glad you chose the direction you went. That's for sure. Yeah, amazing. So when you were applying to colleges, talk a little bit about, like how you were researching schools and, did you look at conservatories and BA versus BFA programs? Talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. This is definitely a spot where having an older sister who had been through the process before was really helpful. She gave me a lot of places to look at that she had looked at, as well as asking a lot of her friends and her peers at her conservatory performing arts school. Uh, she asked all of her friends, where did they apply? And I ended up with this big list of maybe like 30 schools. And I boiled it down to like 17 schools and then again to six that I ended up applying to, which felt more manageable.
Yes, definitely.
There are a lot of variation among them between like the BA and the BFA, and even amongst BFA programs. The big difference is some of them are general feeder programs. Often those are the BA programs where you can specialize in your discipline, but you get training and classes in all of them. So, like, if I wanted to do lighting design, I would take the most lighting design classes, but I would also take costume design and set design and props and learn about how all of these things blend together. And then leave with sort of a generalized theater degree with a specialty. On the other hand, there's the BFA programs, which are usually more concentrated in your department and your discipline. So where I ended up going, the theater school is a good example of this, where almost all of my classes are lighting specific classes. And the entire time I was there, I knew I would be leaving with a degree in lighting design, and and I could take electives and some other classes in these other disciplines, but it was never gonna be as robust or, not like a full spread of theater knowledge. It's mostly your focused discipline. I was really confident in that it was lighting that I wanted to do. So that steered me towards the BFA type programs. Even within the BFA programs, though, there are some schools where you start and you don't declare what your major is going to be necessarily, but you take a bunch of classes and then you end up, after you've like sort of sampled, you pick your concentration and you go down that lane. Again, I was really, really sure. So that's one of the reasons why DePaul was a top choice for me. It was that I could jump right into lighting design and do lighting design the entire time. Additionally, with those BFA type programs, usually you get a lot more hands-on practical experience putting on shows. And that was something that I really wanted, was to be doing lighting design for theater and not just the paper projects or the theory of it, because there's a lot that you discover when you take that thing that you put on paper and you put it into an actual space. Something that I've been saying a lot lately is that light takes up space, is a three-dimensional cone that emits from the lighting fixture. And if there is scenery or other lighting fixtures or something in front of that, it will block it. And now all of a sudden, your light is not doing exactly what you thought, or not making the shot that you thought it was going to, because light takes up space. And since it does that, there needs to not be other things in that space. So those are things that you really discover when you put a light in the air and you turn it on and you're like, oh, wait, yeah, that thing is absolutely there. And I knew that, I saw it on the paper, but I didn't really think about that together. That was something that I definitely learned a lot of in school, and I'm still learning and discovering as I do more and more of it in real life as well. Real life,
Yeah.
postgraduate life,
Yeah.
postgraduate life. Yeah. So my process, backing up a little bit to part of your question, I did a lot of research on the school's websites. There were some schools that honestly I eliminated them just because I didn't like their website. It felt old, it felt clunky, it was hard to navigate, it was hard to figure out what was going on, what their offerings were, and I had a big list of schools to apply to, so I was like, well, I need to narrow it down, and that was the deciding factor for some of them. Others, I did some cursory like interviews or visits to those schools and decided that it was not the right vibe for me. I did some tours at colleges before I even knew what degree I wanted to go for or what discipline I wanted to study, just to get sort of the sense of what different colleges were like. Like, state schools versus private schools is a really big difference in just campus life. So that was definitely good, to sort of guide me and to apply that knowledge when I then had my list of schools that I was narrowing down. Sort of like the feeling of the smaller campus was something that I liked, an intimate class, and a like direct relationship between me and my advisor and the head of my program was really important for me.
Yeah, that's huge, and I'm so glad you shared all of that because it's such a personal decision in the big picture, and it can feel so overwhelming when you have so many schools to choose from, which is a blessing that you have lots of
Yes.
options, but it can feel really tricky to decide to, like, how to drill down to a list that feels comfortable and to know what you're really looking for when you don't know if you really know what you're looking for, so it's a tricky process, and I think a lot of it, again, is, right, just picking certain factors that feel really important, like, will you have that production experience? Will you get to interact with your department chair? Are you going to do one specific area or many different areas? I tell students all the time that sometimes you have to just apply to multiple types of programs within an area you're interested in. And then as you go through the admissions process, that can also be very telling as to whether or not it feels like a good fit. So that's really good to hear. Okay, so you obviously you did a BFA, right? And you had a very specific area of study. What would you say, were some of your biggest takeaways that you had throughout your program? Is there anything that surprised you? And maybe just something about like how your program really opened doors to your next steps, which we'll talk about after you answer this question.
Yeah. Some of the big takeaways, I think it's the college experience, even if it is a BFA and it's like this really rigid schedule of classes that's laid out for you. It still, I feel like it's always what you make of it. There is a lot of freedom in college and your experience, and a lot of things that maybe you don't know are possibilities until you ask for them. And then all of a sudden, all of your support and your advisors are like, yes, absolutely, go do that. I would love you to have that experience. They just don't know that that's something you wanted to do. Um, so that was really great for me. I feel like I had a lot of freedom to go to my advisor and be like, I've got this internship coming up and I really want to do it, but it means I have to leave classes early at the end of this year. And I did that my freshman year, which at the time I felt like it was a bit unusual for a freshman to leave at the end of the year already, but I was really motivated to do internships and to get it was a summer stock that I was gonna go work at for a summer, and I was like, "I really want this hands-on technical experience. I really want to go. How can we make it work?" And my advisor was really great about being like, "Yeah, that seems like a great experience for you. Let's talk to your professors and figure out what you can do ahead of time. What can you do remotely once you leave and make that a possibility?" And then I had another internship my senior year that ended up taking up most of my spring quarter, like the last 10 weeks that I was at school. And we figured out how to push a lot of my credits earlier into the year so that I uh, had finished, all of my requirements, but had more free time in that last quarter so that I could be working full time at a theater planning firm, but I still came in to do production practices and some of my core classes. So that was another thing where they were very supportive of it. I just had to come with the desire for it, and then we figured out how to make it work together. So I really think learning to advocate for yourself and to dream and then not be scared to express those dreams to people
Mhm.
is a really big skill that you can learn in college. I'm still developing that skill now. It
Mm,
is like something that I feel like I'll always be working on a bit, but I feel like in general people are really excited when you are excited for a thing. So
mhm.
if you can come with a passion, it will inspire people to support that passion.
I love that so much, and I really appreciate you saying that and hearing that. I think that it's just like one of the biggest, most impactful pieces of advice somebody can hear is like be your own best advocate and don't be afraid because again really the worst that's going to happen is somebody's going to say no or not respond to your email and like okay that's fine, you just keep trying, right, keep knocking on doors.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think that's a great segue for you to start talking about, so you graduated and you launched into your professional career, so share what life has been like. What are you doing now? I'm so excited for everybody to hear this.
Yeah. I graduated and continued doing the internship that I had my last quarter of senior year. I was working for Schuler Shook, which is a theater planning firm, and lighting design and audiovisual. They have a lot of hats, but specifically, I was working under the theater planning department, which uh, theater planning is kind of like theater engineering, I like to say, but without the engineering degree or specifications. But it is really the design of theater systems, the audience relation to the stage and the rigging and the lighting system. So it was a lot of stuff that is related to my performing arts degree, but not a direct application of my lighting design. And I was really interested in it because I really love that interaction of technician to creative to performer to audience member. And I feel like that's one of the things that makes theater so special is that all of those people are working in this same room together. And you sort of like are holding hands passing the artwork between each other. So I there was a lot of benefits to having that job. It was a full-time job, which was my first experience working in that out of
Mm.
school. So it was a really great opportunity to see how I thrive or how I work in a full-time experience, which is very different from school and very different from freelancing theater work. And it gave me some good discipline and drafting knowledge and stuff that I didn't get necessarily that practical experience of when I was in school. But like the idea of like, this is work now. This is, you have to make these drawings so that a contractor can go build it is like a whole new level of specificity that you have to put in your work and diligence. So it was really, I really enjoyed getting that experience, especially as an intern, learning from some really great theater planners at that company. I worked there full time for about 3 more months after school. And then I transitioned to a part time agreement with them and started about equally splitting my time between continuing my theater planning work at that company and beginning my freelancing lighting work in Chicago. So I started taking storefront lighting gigs, working with friends, getting recommendations from places, and a lot of work just sort of came up organically, which was really nice and reassuring and exciting as I was graduating college to see that there is work and that I am well positioned to receive that work, as well as starting to send cold emails. It was a big thing that I did after graduating and am still doing to reach out to lighting designers in the city, people who are coming through the city working on projects and just trying to get my name out there and offer my services as an assistant or just get in the room and try to learn from them. I sent a lot of emails. I had a couple responses, which is generally how it goes with those cold emails. And so you just got to keep sending them. I had a couple coffee chats that I feel like were good, but didn't really gain traction, but was just a really good experience and practice for me to meet new people and talk about my interests and hear about theirs and sort of see if we were a good fit. And so some of them were hits and some of them were misses. I had a really great conversation with a lighting designer named Jason Lynch and started working with him almost immediately after that coffee chat. And so that one felt like a really one of the opportunities that I gained a lot of traction and I started doing some of my favorite work has now come out of that. That work being Chicago Children's Theater and working with theater for young audiences. I find just so incredibly fulfilling, and it's so much fun to put on shows for kids. Whether or not they've seen theater before, they're always just so excited to be in the room and to share that energy. So that's like a great example of where it's so much fun to combine the audience with the performer and create. That's where theater really happens, I think,
Yeah.
to get floofy with my
Yeah.
work.
No, it's great. It's true.
I also spent some time just applying to almost not all, to a lot of LinkedIn jobs or like Indeed jobs. I had job alerts set for those for lighting design. A lot of the notifications that I got were not at all relevant to my discipline. There are a lot of like architectural lighting design, which is a super interesting and valid place to go with your lighting design degree. It's not as much where I was focused. And then I happened to get there was a job that popped up for lighting design for a sort of like Christmas type production. And I interviewed and I didn't get the lighting design job for that, but they offered me the assistant lighting design job because the lighting designer that they hired couldn't be there for some of the initial rehearsals. So I came in, took a bunch of notes for him, met him pretty much for the first day at Load In
Mm.
and ended up really hitting it off with him. And we had a really great experience working together. And then 2 years later, he emailed me to offer me a job at Looking Glass because he got hired as a lighting supervisor and remembered me as a theater lighting designer who was, competent and there and available. And that has now snowballed and I work as the assistant lighting supervisor at Looking Glass with Aaron, who is the lighting supervisor. And that has been another really great experience where I have, continued to build that relationship. You should just take as many opportunities as you can. You never know when the thing is going to happen or if what is going to snowball. So it's really cool to see it all snowballing in real time and be part of that experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so true, right? Is you just never know at what point in your timeline of your life and your professional history, like people are going to come back around and support you. And I know firsthand how amazing you are as an employee and a colleague and coworker. And I am in no way surprised that you are being tapped in for different projects, and more doors are going to keep opening for you, right? But it's just there's so much to be said too about again creating those great impressions with people and having a strong work ethic and yeah, just kind of like knowing that as you continue to gain your professional experience, you're gonna get more and more opportunities because you're doing such good work, and you're a great example of that. I love it, and I also love too that, we haven't done any of these stories yet with a designer, and I think it's so exciting for people who are interested in pursuing that pathway to hear what that could look like, and it's also interesting for people who are listening that aren't familiar with the design tech side of theater to, like, stop and think about where that magic comes from, right? Because it's so easy to
Yeah.
take for granted the designs of a show and not really think about the lighting and the sound and the sets because it's just happening as part of the show. But the shows do not happen without all of the work that you all do as designers and technicians. So I just love that you're giving a little peek behind the curtain for people to learn more about what that looks like and the impact on it. So amazing. I love it so much. Okay, so Karen, tell us a little bit about one of the things I like to focus on in the story. It's called the Return on Investment Story series, right? So, where do you think you have gained transferable skills and how have they played out so far for you professionally?
Yeah. One of the biggest one of my favorite classes that I took in college was called collaboration. And it was just a pretty much a year-long seminar class that we talked about how to collaborate with each other. And that is such a big skill and such an important part of, I feel like, any job that you have, any work that you do. I was maybe with the exception of freelancing and being your own independent business, but even then you're working and you're selling your work to other people. And so no work really happens in a vacuum. You're not going to be the only person working on a project. You're not going to be the only person caring about a project. And so learning how to talk and sort of translate whatever your discipline is into something that somebody with another area of expertise can understand is a really, really important skill. So we
Yeah.
learned a lot about active listening and empathy and even things like some stuff that comes up in writing classes, like active versus passive voice, is super helpful. And I use that in my email communication all the time.
Uh,
And in person communication, like in theater, there is often things that go wrong or
mm,
things that are not necessarily what you expected. I like to call them discoveries,
mhm.
starting to say. So we take some of the negative connotations out of those because that just can put people in a mood that is not helpful or productive. And you don't need that. We're just gonna encounter this discovery and figure out how to move on from there. I love to use passive language when I'm talking about things that are not going right, if it may or may not have been a specific person's responsibility to make that happen. But at the point where we're solving the problem, it's not always helpful to talk about, like, you did this thing and this isn't happening because of XYZ. So I like to talk about problems as, just natural disasters. Just the
Mhm.
universe has presented us with this thing and that baton cannot fly now because it cannot.
Right.
There's no blame, there is no accusations, it is just this thing that we now can band together and address as a group. So I feel like that is a very good transferable skill that I learned, and I do personally apply to theater because I'm still doing theater, but is really helpful in lots of different disciplines. I've talked with friends who work in consulting a lot and who also use that type of language to approach problems when you're dealing with people who are stressed and who have many things on their plate. Approaching them with generosity is so helpful to get to the result that you all want, which is to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Problem solving is another great skill that we learned in theater school. There is many different ways to accomplish the same thing, whether it be like literally, technically, we could use light A or we could use light B or we could invent our own third light C to do this. Or it is, well, how do we want to tell this story? And what are the means that we have at our disposal in this space with this budget and these people is going to be different than the next time we do that play in a different space with a different budget and a different group.
Hmm.
So thinking about trying to boil down problems and things to like, what is the essence of it? What is the important thing that we are communicating? What is the like practical thing that we need to solve? Like this set piece needs to come in right here at this time. And maybe the conversation is talking around other stuff like, well, what does that set piece look like? Or these other things. And then trying to be able to find the like little kernel at the center of that is I feel like a good skill that I learned that is really helpful in many different scenarios.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And I think what's coming out of what you're saying too is that you have to be so malleable in what you're able to do in spaces you can work in, right? Like, in some professions, you're going to work with very much the same people doing very similar things and it's cyclical and that's great and that works really well for some people, but what you do again get from working in theater spaces or having a type of degree is you can bounce from different types of people to different spaces as you were saying and right, like problem solve in an instant and then sort of reflect back on what the mistakes might have been, how it could have been more efficient, flowed more smoothly. Like all of those things are really important in any career field that you pursue. But I think you learn really on your feet when you're in theater spaces.
Absolutely. I do love always find myself after I have finished a project being going back and reflecting on, well, how could I have accomplished this differently? What maybe could I have done at like 70% of the way done in this project to alter the outcome or at 25%. And I like to make notes for myself or do like a little bit of journaling to prep myself for the next time I approach a similar project to think about like, okay, well, I really need to make sure I'm talking to the sound designer about the transitions and what does that look like because the lights and the sound go hand in hand so much in the transition. And some of the times that it feels the most magical is when it feels like one cohesive gesture.
Yes.
And I've worked in some projects where I get bogged down by just making sure that the lights are turning on and that there is stuff on stage. Or maybe it's something even more like internal and it's like, well, how do I make it look like I want it to look in this really, really minute way when I can after reflecting realize, oh, maybe I should zoom out a little bit more here and think about how does it work in relation to other people's disciplines.
Sure.
So I'm a big proponent of reflecting after you're done with the project on what you feel went really well, what is really successful, and what are your takeaways and things that you would adjust for yourself for next time. That was a thing that we did in the theater school as well. We had we called them postmortem discussions where we talked with the creative team after we were done with the show and reflected on the process as a group.
Mhm.
That's something that sometimes exists in professional theater, but not always. So it's just a great thing to learn and to carry I carry with me, for myself.
Yeah, I love that too. And then just again, it just helps you personally learn and grow and, keep developing as a professional. So whether you're doing it in a more formal group setting or doing it for yourself, there's a lot of power in that sort of post-reflection, post-mortem period. Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. I just adore you and you know that.
Aw.
The last thing I want to ask in our chat today is what advice might you give somebody who is thinking about pursuing a performing arts degree, following this passion, this pathway? It can be very scary and intimidating for people. And sometimes their
Yeah,
supporters can't really understand how this is going to work out or look like for them in the
yeah.
future. And, so anything that you've learned during your time, I would love for you to share your wisdom.
Yeah. I feel like it is I might be a little cyclical here, but a lot of the BA versus BFA and then the nuance in BA and BFA programs is super important. And I made the choice to really specialize in lighting design and now being a professional and working with other people, I meet all types. People who did all sorts of degrees or did like a creative writing degree and now are working in theater. Like there is so many paths that your BFA or your BA can take you and so many ways to get into theater. So
Mm,
your college degree is can be a really great stepping stone to set you up for that profession that you want. But there are so many ways to get there and so many places to take your degree. So I have found myself being a little jealous sometimes of people who did BA degrees and who took that costume construction class or those prop classes. And I feel like those could have been a really great resource for me as I figure out how to integrate lighting into props and
Yeah.
costumes and things that are practical problems that I encounter as a theater technician.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of value in all of these different degree options. And it no matter where you go, coming back to it is, what you make of it and what you desire for yourself in this program. So even if you do find yourself in a BFA program with a really strict lighting only track, people who I went to school with still did as close to double major as we could at our department and took all of the, you know, set design classes. And right now I'm working with theater, somebody who did the theater tech degree at the theater school, who took all of the stage management classes and now is a really great deck ASM,
Mm.
assistant stage manager, who is great and knows all those communication skills and apply them to their work at doing those scene changes and organizing a crew to accomplish that stuff really fast. So you can still find ways to pursue what you're interested in inside of your really rigorous degree, or inside of your more open degree. You can still specialize and find those transferable skills. The other piece of advice I have is that pretty much every experience and interaction you have with your collaborators is a networking opportunity, and that can feel gross and heavy and like it's a big burden and it's a big obligation to always be on and be networking and be selling yourself. I have found that even when I am not like actively trying to pitch myself, networking is still happening. People notice and appreciate the work that you do and the person that you are in the room. There are moments, everybody has moments of frustration and exhaustion, and that is a really really common thing to see in performing art spaces because it is a art form that is largely built out of passion. Is most of the people who are doing it because they really want to do it and they really care about it, and that can lead to a lot of big feelings and a lot of stress when it is at what they are pouring their heart and soul into. And I can share it with this room of collaborators who may not be as all in on this specific play as the director or the playwright is, because they're the technician and this is the third slot in their season, not necessarily title of play that the director is like been holding for years.
Mm.
So approaching things with kindness and with grace, and as often as you can muster to be positive, people receive that every single time. There's absolutely time and space for every individual to be stressed and to be tired. And when you are in that space, it is so helpful to have to look over to your friend who is like, I see you, I hear you. This is theater. You will make it through this. You are not alone. I am here to help you.
Yeah.
So I've been in both of those spots, and I have really found that to be one of the biggest things that like propels me forward in my career, as well as it is just one of the times that I feel the most rewarded and the most fulfilled in doing my art. I really love the collaborative spirit, and I find that there is so much fulfillment there for me. So I try to hold on to that and focus on that as much as I can. And it happens to work out well for me in terms of my career as well. So that's really great.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that is golden advice. Thank you, Karen. This is such a joy to
Thank
talk to
you.
you. Oh my gosh, I am so glad that we can continue to be, friends and colleagues, and I can just get to have you share with all of the people listening about the successes that you've had so far. And, this is also a really friendly reminder to people, like, when you go see shows, pay attention to the
Yeah.
design tech team, like look for those names and appreciate that none of the magic on stage would happen without you and your colleagues. And so just a little extra shout out again, because you all
One
make
of
it happen.
one of my mentors would always say, without lighting, everything that we do is just radio. The
Yeah,
play is.
definitely.
And so it's a great little special salt on top, and on top of that, it's so fun when the technical elements are, like, just felt more than they are, like, noticed actively, because often, what the actors are talking about is what you should be focusing on, and it's fun when that passes hands and when the lighting is the thing that you should focus on. Yeah, it's just all a big, great collaboration, and all parts of it make me smile. So
Yes,
that's pretty
me
good.
too. Me too. And I'll give a very cheesy admission for the world now to hear whoever listens to this. But when I see shows, when the lights come up and if it's a musical, the music starts, I get a little teary eyed every time at the beginning of a show because I'm like, here it comes. That's before an actor has spoken a word. The curtain is rising. So that's exactly what you said. It is a feeling that you and the people you work with curate for those of us who are going to have this magical experience for a couple hours. So it's important, everyone.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. All right, Karen. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
everyone keep an eye on Karen Wallace and her career because it's going to continue to be a big one.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure talking and reflecting on my time at the school with you.